Are you in the HubSpot ecosystem and looking to engage with the industrial and manufacturing space? Are you in the industrial and manufacturing space looking to learn more about how HubSpot can elevate your business? Join Chris and Salim, two HubSpot solution partners with 25 years in the industrial and manufacturing space, as they explore the intersection of these two worlds. Through interviews with experts from both ecosystems, they will attempt to bridge the gap in the largest market we know today.
This podcast is an independent production by Conveying Your Message and is not affiliated with or endorsed by HubSpot. The views, opinions, and positions expressed by the hosts and guests are theirs alone and do not reflect the views, opinions, or positions of HubSpot Incorporated. Any HubSpot employees appearing as guests on this podcast are not representing HubSpot in any official capacity and are sharing their own personal opinions.
Welcome to Sprockets Gears, the unofficial HubSpot industrial podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Sprockets and Gears, the go-to podcast for all things HubSpot in the industrial and manufacturing space. I'm your host, Chris Carolan, and unfortunately Salim can't be here today. He's a little under the weather, but we are powering on. And today we have Bob Balm, a seasoned expert in adapting HubSpot for manufacturing companies. We're going to explore some of the unique challenges faced in this sector and how HubSpot can really be a game changer to help with that. How you doing today, Bob?
Yeah, I'm good. Best wishes for 2024, I guess, if we haven't done that. No, I'm doing well. It's exciting year coming up, I think, with some interesting projects regarding the use of HubSpot in interesting spaces. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to what that's going to bring, and excited for today also to talk about that kind of stuff. So.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have you. We like to start out setting the stage. You know, HubSpot is creating a new category of sorts. They're referring to customer platform. And I'd like you to share what that phrase means to you.
Yeah, it was a bit last minute because I only read it just before we started. But just thinking about it, I think it's got two, for me, it's got two meanings if I think about it. From one side, I was inspired, obviously, by the videos that you've sent me ahead of this cast about how you're using it to basically build, literally, a customer platform so that all of the data that is inside of HubSpot, well, not all of it, but some of the actionable data that is useful for a customer to have is also available to them in a very organized and neat manner so that they can interact with your business in a different way. But then another thing that I think will also be something that HubSpot sort of likes to put out there as almost a philosophy is to make it so that your HubSpot users can really help your customers along their journey rather than doing the things that they need to do as a sales rep, like go through the stages, or as a marketeer, I need to get X amount of leads or whatever, is to really put them also in the passenger seat next to the customer and basically help the customer achieve things, right? So that, for me, I think is the twin thing. And in a very practical sense, you can build an actual customer platform that customers through the CMS side of things can really interact with the data inside of your CRM, but also just from a more strategic point of view, I guess, enabling your team to work together alongside the customer to create a fantastic experience for all parties involved, basically.
Yes, couldn't agree more. Love that take. Now, taking a kind of a step back from that, you've been in this game for a while. You know, if you could share a little bit about your journey up to this point. There's been a lot of evolution of, you know, marketing in general and HubSpot and its ecosystem. So if you could just share a little bit about, you know, what you've been up to.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing, I say, marketing in general, because I mean we're talking about HubSpot. Obviously, it's got multiple aspects to it, but my roots are in marketing, and I've been doing that for about 10 years now. I think starting out just as a general marketeer at a general business. In translation, it doesn't really matter what business it was in, but that's where I kind of first learned the ropes about writing a blog, keeping a website up to date, sending newsletters. This was 2011, 12, something along those lines. And I think it was there actually that I first got in touch with HubSpot through Copy Blogger, it was called back then. I'm not sure if it's still like an affiliate or some kind of subsidiary, but they wrote all this stuff about, how do you write content for the web to create business out of it. And through that, I got into HubSpot, which at that point I thought was just mind-blowing, like having workflows to automatically send emails with like a delay in between. It was like magic to me. And it's been something that I didn't start working with HubSpot right away. After that, I spent some time working with another agency in the Netherlands, mostly implementing Oracle Eloqua, which I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like a major enterprise back in the day anyway, marketing automation platform, which was very complex with a very archaic UI, as if you're back in 1995 or 19 something. Which was quite challenging to work with, but that was been my learning ground, basically. So when I finally did get into HubSpot, which was only about 3-4 years ago or something, that I really started to work with HubSpot as the primary tool, that felt like a breath of fresh air, obviously, because HubSpot had evolved much more at that point. It didn't have custom objects yet, which for me was always the big thing that Eloqua has had since all the way in the beginning. But it's been a great journey exploring HubSpot ever since. And it's something that I come from marketing. B2B marketing has been really what I've been doing throughout my career, mostly helping companies set up like a demand generation strategy, especially since that's been sort of popularized by people like Chris Walker and stuff like that the last couple of years. But at heart, I would say like an architect or a solution person. Like we have this MacGyver gene in the family, runs in the family, where it's true. Like my dad and my uncle, my cousin, we're all sort of have this, we get a Band-Aid and a paperclip and we create a tank out of it or something like that. That sort of, I want to solve problems type of a gene, and we're just naturally really good at it. So lately, over the course of the last few months, I've been moving more from marketing towards solution architecture, like really seeing what with HubSpot as the tool, but also like integrating it through like make.com or other stuff like that to other platforms like Aircall or OpenAI, the stuff that you can do with that. And just really trying to build crazy solutions with impact. That's kind of what I like to do. Like build things that people go and look at and go, what, I've never thought of this. But that also solve like a business case or some kind of problem for a business, so that the end user does have the feeling of, hey, this is working for me, and it's not just using the feature because of the feature. I could go on forever, but I think that's in a nutshell kind of what's going on with me. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And I think before we get into some of those business cases, so I love that angle. Like, there's always got to be a business case to solve for, or else what are we doing with the tool, really? So as you've seen, like especially with that MacGyver gene present, as you've seen kind of HubSpot explode in the last couple of years with CMS and Operations Hub and custom objects and Commerce Hub this past year, just the ability really quickly to change from marketing to sales to CRM to now full lead to cash platform, really, in some cases. Like, how has that, like, it sounds like if you've maybe been wanting to do it for a while with that gene, but only the last few months you've gotten to play with it. How have you viewed that evolution?
Absolutely. It's been, you've noticed this yourself as well, probably, is that somehow HubSpot has really stepped on the gas pedal the last couple of, I'd say, 3/4 of a year or so. And it's been, it always feels like a kid in a candy store for me whenever new updates like that come out. Custom Object was already a big one. Operations Hub took me some time to sort of understand, how is this going to help me? Because I'm not a developer per se, so working with things like custom code actions took some learning. But once I did get that underway, that was just a fantastic eye opener. And it's super exciting to see what they're doing now also with the CRM extensions, the React cards that you can build onto records. That for me is an absolute game changer, because it literally gives me the opportunity to solve use cases for some of our customers that have been limits. Like, let's say a year ago, I had to go to my customer and say, I get what you want, but we can't really build that inside of HubSpot. And now a year later, I can go back and say, not only can I build it, but boy, can we build something really cool out of it? Like, that's been super interesting to see how HubSpot is developing, and fortunately for me, in a way that is very much in line with what I would hope they are developing towards. So that's super exciting to see.
Yeah, that's usually how it works for me as well. They don't always get there as fast as I want them to, but more often than not, they're surprising me with other things that I wasn't expecting, but was exactly the thing I would have wanted, had I been in that scenario. I love looking at the betas and, understanding what's new and what's coming. They're also really open to feedback, from their partners and just all their users. So it's really cool to be a part of that. So as you've seen that, as you've started playing with it, can you share some use cases you've worked with related to manufacturing? Even proof of concept stuff would be interesting to talk about. Because overall, I think our goal with this show is just to educate on the full, end-to-end capabilities. Now, I think it's fun to create that wow moment when we can, because it is nice to say, but also challenging to say, yeah, you can do that now. Like, well, I couldn't last year. Like, you're right, but we can now. They're moving really fast, so we're just trying to keep up with the education here. So it'd be awesome if you could share some stories with us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the main one that we use, that we've promoted left and right as well a couple of times, is one that I'm quite proud of. This was back when programmable emails first became a thing inside of HubSpot. I think it's still in beta, it might be. I'm not sure if it's like fully officially released yet, but it's so the option, if you don't know programmable emails, the idea behind it is that you can generate the content of the email based on information that is onto the contact record, or even on associated records to the contact. And the example that HubSpot uses in talking about this, and it's really easy to understand, I think, is let's say that you're a real estate company and you want to send your portfolio or items in your real estate listings in your portfolio to people who have specified. Like as a customer, I might say, all right, I'm looking for a house in this budget range, in this geographical location, and so on and so on. And then you can set up the email to basically send, and then based on the customer's preferences, it will include those custom objects, in this case, the real estate custom objects that match those customer criteria, and then basically have the image there and like the title and the price and whatever other properties you want to pull from the custom object record into the email. So it's something that I think when you look at more B2C type businesses, something that seems very logical to have as a feature, but until they released it, I think this was 2021 or something in the summer, not too sure, it wasn't inside of HubSpot. And we had one customer in the manufacturing industry. Well, I'm not sure it's manufacturing, but they buy and sell refurbished forklifts. And they're a very large player in at least the Dutch market, but they operate globally. They've got locations in Asia and across Europe. And basically, this is they only sell to other vendors, retailers, right? They don't sell to end users, but they sell to people who sell to end users. And these are traders. Like, these are people who will go onto whatever sourcing site they can find in the morning and just refresh to get the new stock, and they want the stock as soon as it's available, and then they'll pick up the phone and they say, oh, I want that one, this one, and that one, and throw in something else for a good deal, and then bam, the deal is done. And it's a couple of tens of thousands of euros in machinery, and it just gets traded like that. So one very important aspect of their business was to be able to send that daily email saying, this is our new stock. They would get like 20 or 30 machines, or probably a bit less, like between 10 and 20 machines ready to go every day, because their team will be refurbishing them and then putting them up for sale, basically. And a significant part of their contact database would be literally at their computer in the morning waiting for that email. And they just migrated from a different system where they had that sort of customly set up, and we wanted to build the same thing inside of HubSpot. And today you've got the product roll-up inside of emails now, I think, which looks at your products. But these, because they're one-off machines, right? You get one machine with ID number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and when that one is sold, it's sold. You can't say, okay, get me another one of those, because it's all used. So we use custom objects for this. So we had to find a way to get custom objects into emails in such a way that the person creating the email didn't have to go in and say, all right, I'm going to type in the name, put in the picture, type in all of the specs of that particular machine. So we approached it in two ways. Basically, we built like a custom email module there where they can just put in the reference number of the machine, and it will load all of the specs into like a little card, I guess, inside of the email. And they can just do that by hand. Like if they want to highlight a couple of machines, then they can select the machine that way. And we also built like a custom version of that same module where they can basically say, all right, I want to get machines that are of a certain brand or of a certain type, and it will get the most recent ones, or the one that we send every day, the stock email, basically. It's fully automated. There's no human being touching that email at all, and it just sends whatever email or whatever machines were added in stock that day. It's multilingual as well. It shows the price or it doesn't, based on whether the person receiving it has access to that. It's got currency stuff in there as well, so it will show the price in a different currency if that's needed. And if for whatever reason the API doesn't provide new machines to the database, like it crashed or there simply are no machines, there's a mechanism that we built. It's quite, I don't want to say duct tapey, but it does work. It just doesn't look very elegant when you look at it. It blocks sending, basically. So it will not send like an empty email or something, which we'll have in that case. And yeah, that's a lot of talking about that particular solution, but that's one that we're always quite proud of, is because we've basically said, all right, back when this was still relatively new, custom objects weren't that big at that point either. Is to have found a way to send a dynamic email every day with records from the custom object table, which was it's still one that I'm pretty proud of because of how it works, basically.
Yeah, man, I'm so happy to learn about that. We've got a client trying to do something similar, and we've been talking about different ways to do that, not only through the communications, but I think via the website too. And that's what's so powerful for me about this system is like, I used to suggest that, if you're a multifaceted manufacturer, you have all these different business lines, trying to communicate and message properly to all the different audiences within each business line, trying to do that from a place of one or two marketers or one team, it just feels like, and it is an insurmountable task if you don't have a system in place. So I used to suggest like you really need these different teams. Like if you want to grow with this specific product and you need to talk about these specific audiences, that's a whole team. And if you want to do it with another business line too, you can't just break up that team, like add that hat. It's a whole nother team. Now, well, you still should have different people in charge maybe of those lines. You don't need nearly as many people if you're doing the CRM stuff, well, and you're managing the data well. And that's the power of really like laying these marketing, sales, service, CMS tools just right on top, like completely integrated with the CRM. Like I love, so that use case resonates. And I would imagine what you described with that product card, and really that's, for me, a lot of what they're doing right now is bridging the gap between the deal, closed won, and the deal management, the sales management, and the post-sale stuff. Because so much of that hinges on the products and the deliverables that are going, that are being delivered, when we have a win, right? And we used to have to rely on ERPs and other systems exclusively for that information. We might still get it from there, but if we can bring that stuff into HubSpot, it just makes it, way more accessible to internal teams to support external customers. So that was a great use case. Can you talk about some of the impact it had on that business?
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I love about manufacturing as well, right? I don't know how it is in the States, but here in the Netherlands anyway, most manufacturers are, let's say, 10 years in the past in terms of adoption of like new technology and all that stuff. And this use case particular, they're a relatively small team, even though they're pretty large in terms of the amount of business that they do. They've got one marketing person who is doing a fantastic job, but she's been at the business for over 30 years now, I think. And they have in-house like a copy studio, literally, where they would, in let's say the early 90s, put together magazines for the business that they would mail order, deliver through mail, where they would literally put the pictures in with tape or something, and have it be scanned and printed into physical copy. And before we came, obviously that wasn't the situation before we came in with HubSpot, but she did have to, like when she did, apart from the daily stock emails, she would send promotional emails every now and then. That would be literally building out that email, right? Like saying, drag in a title element, put in an image, put in, this is the year the thing was built, this is the mileage, this is the price, whatever, put all the specs in there. And I suppose she could clone the stuff, but she still had to manually edit the email, basically, which, since they're sending it out in, I think, 9 languages or something like that, it's just a huge time sink. So what we did was, make that multilingual, so that the reference to, for example, the type of engine that's in there, diesel or gasoline or whatever, gets automatically translated to the proper language, and make it so that she can just type in the reference number, say, I want this machine, that machine, this machine, done, send. Which is just the impact of that is it's very noticeable in terms of the amount of time that she spends on creating and sending emails. So it's a relatively simple one, but that's what I like about for the manufacturing business, is that if it's not always easy to make an impact, because in my experience they do tend to be businesses that have very bespoke wishes because of how the business line is set up. And HubSpot does, that's what's improving now, but let's say 3 years ago or something, it's still pretty cookie cutter CRM, I would say, which makes it difficult to recommend something like HubSpot fully, which I always found challenging to recommend it fully to a business that has very specific needs. But more and more nowadays, I'm actually able to say, yes, we can do this inside of HubSpot, and not have to feel like, yes, we can do this, but we kind of have to build this workaround. It's becoming less and less the case that I have to say, sure, let me put my thinking hat on and come up with some kind of wacky solution. I can just say, sure, this is something that's supported out of the box or with some customization.
Yeah, and we do have an episode coming up about like standardization versus customization. I think that's going to be super interesting topic moving forward as HubSpot kind of grows into, this all customizable platform. I'd argue that some of the messes we run into when it comes to tech stacks is because you you enjoy having this blank slate type of software that allows you to do whatever you want, when in lots of cases you can get yourself into trouble when you do stuff like that.
Yeah. I just want to, like, quickly, one thing that I love about those new React cards, I don't know if you've experimented with them at all yet, but the idea that you can build serverless functions, which can to some extent be whatever you want them to be or do whatever you want them to do. But the front end of it, like the side that you see inside of HubSpot's purposefully said, all right, you can only use these, let's say, HubSpot approved or HubSpot branded building blocks, like a button or a progress bar and all of that stuff. And it looks and feels the HubSpot style. And I think just as a sort of a, preview to your next episode, that's exactly what I think is a great marriage of standardization versus customization. Like, you build it custom, but it's still presented in such a way inside of the interface that whoever's using it feels like they're using sort of one system that's not like a patchwork of all kinds of different iframes with different looks and feels and different button colors and all that stuff, which just to me feels like a nightmare of an interface if you have to work with stuff like that.
Yeah, certainly the usability, like as they introduce the new stuff, like, conditional properties as an example, like what are the biggest wish list items forever, always got in the way of a comparison with Salesforce, in my experience. But now that they've delivered it, just like with no training, it's just so intuitive to how you set it up in the interface. And like when they do bring in these features, just you can tell there's always like they really mean it when they say the core focus is user experience and usability of the platform in a way that helps whoever's using it grow. Like, because it's not we could customize the hell out of it, but that if that person that's in charge of the CRM leaves, or something happens and you can't maintain it now, like what's the good? Like the customization is no longer doing any good. So it's been exciting to see that with the CRM cards. And just as they continue to do that, it's been super eye-opening the past few months that I've been inside the ecosystem. It's kind of how they think about stuff, and why the system is so usable is really, really fun to see. Absolutely, yeah, and I think it's one thing, like you mentioned it earlier as well, is trying to, because we see that, right? You and I as super admins and probably multiple portals for our customers, we get so much experience with this stuff. We almost instinctively know, oh, this is going to be a great change, or this is groundbreaking. What I think is the big challenge now, especially since the velocity of those updates is so great, is trying to educate all of that to the end user, helping them not just understand the features, but understand sort of the philosophy behind the product that they purchased. And some companies get that, right? They're already invested in going to say, yeah, we want HubSpot to be sort of like the core of our RevOps or front office sort of chain, and we understand that everything is linked together. But there's so many businesses where I see the potential, and I was like, oh, you still use that system for your CRM, and we're interacting with it from marketing. You could really make this a lot better if you just use HubSpot for it. But that's a very difficult conversation to have unless they start to experience the pain themselves. And I think that's it's not. I don't want to say it's the most fun part of my job, but it's interesting to try and channel that enthusiasm that I have about the tool. Jumping around like some Duracell bunny about whatever new updates there are, into serious face. This could be a great business case for you if you moved part of your business to HubSpot, and explaining how that could work. And that's So what advice do you have for manufacturing companies that are thinking about a change, are just starting with HubSpot? Maybe they've only used like the marketing hub only, and they still think that's all it can do. Like, what advice do you have for those folks?
That's a tricky one. I would say, think it's difficult because it depends a lot on exactly what processes you have. But maybe that's the thing is have some good documentation about what your processes look like, and it's going to be hard to say up front, like, and probably HubSpot can do it, but take good inventory of what your process looks like. Why do you do the things you do right now? Are they 100% necessary? Does everybody actually do it that way? It's not so much advice, I would say, about have a look at HubSpot, but more like an advice about have a look at your operational chain, I would say. I sometimes feel like, and it's not to underestimate what it, like I don't want to underestimate the complexity of their business chains, but sometimes I feel like they overestimate it a little bit. Like some things could probably be simpler than they actually are right now, and then you could use HubSpot to achieve that. Whereas upfront, especially if they're not, if it's not the person that you're talking to who's thinking it in terms of processes, there might be like a sales director or a supply manager or whatever. They tend to have obviously put a lot of gravity into this is, it's a serious stuff. This is my process. It's very important that it happens well, and it's very complex. Maybe they don't even want to really change to HubSpot. Then you have to sort of advise them or convince them of it anyway. If you break it down into parts, what your process looks like, why you do certain things in a certain way that you do them, I think they'll find that there's a lot of, well, maybe not a lot, but there might be stuff in there that they can scrap out or definitely improve on. But I don't have like a golden nugget of advice, I would say. I could probably think of one, just not on the spot right now.
Well, I think that's it. I mean, like just understanding your current state, I think is difficult for most companies. And it's understandable. I mean, they've been doing something a certain way for 50 years. It's been successful, sometimes massively successful, until the last few years when the supply chain just got destroyed and you had to rethink how you're serving customers, and you don't have people in offices, and just everything changed. And for me, it always comes back to digital transformation, even whether you like that word or not, right? That's what we're doing here. And we keep seeing that, like, these are modern tools in a lot of cases. Like HubSpot is not the only one that can do some of this stuff for you. And a lot of them, when you have open APIs and customizability, and they can do whatever you want them to do with enough time and money. But asking questions like, what happens when it's in place? How easy is it to maintain? Am I attached to like a managed services contract? And is it going to take as long? Like, I think that's, some of the fun I'm going to have this year is like just showing what's possible and doing it in a way it's clear it's not going to take 12 months. It doesn't have to take hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, these tools are now available to you, and they're available in a way that just doesn't have the same costs that things like this used to have, right?
I've got one, actually. Now that you're talking about this, I think a big bit of the advice would be take a look at your business process from your customer's perspective, right? Just going back to the question that you posed me at the beginning, what does a customer platform look like? Have a good hard look at how your business process looks right now, and determine at each step, basically, what is the impact of doing it this way for the customer in terms of the amount of time that it takes them, the quality of the service that they're getting, or whatnot. And it might be that you find quite a lot of hoops that you feel that you have to jump through right now that they may be good for your business, but they're not that great for your customer, the end experience. And this is something that, I don't know if it was with you that I discussed this, but how there's another project that we're actually about to launch, which I'm really excited about, is building HubSpot against an ERP system, NetSuite, to serve primarily as a customer service platform, but with potential expansion into like a retailer platform and all that kind of stuff as well, where we had that discussion about the ERP system can do a lot of these things. That's something that the customer had as an internal discussion as well. Why don't we just build this inside of the ERP? But what's something that you quickly discover is that, especially something as, let's say, I don't want to say archaic, it's a bit of a mean word, but like a platform that's been around for quite a long time and probably is quite set in its ways and is not transforming that rapidly, might technically offer things that you could employ for customer service, but it's not built with the end customer in mind. It's built with the process in mind, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but those two don't always align. And I think especially, that's what I love about the philosophy of HubSpot, is that it seems much more to be built around how is the end customer going to experience working with your business. And that's, I think, an often overlooked factor. It's often being, if they select a new tool for CRM or whatever else that HubSpot would be evaluated for, is that it's looked only at from a perspective of how does this impact our processes? What kind of steps would this mean for our process? And not enough thought is given to what would this mean for the customer experience in the end. And that's, I think that would be the nugget of wisdom. I want to retract my previous answer and put that one forward.
No, I think it's all related, because you do have to really understand your processes to understand how they impact the customer as well. And that's probably like a whole facet of those processes that you haven't even thought about. I've had some success of getting that understanding. When you're asking the question, because you hear you need to be customer centric, customer experience is the differentiator. But when you're used to running your business out of something like an ERP, you've been focused on margin management, inventory management, profitability, all internal stuff, right? And when you ask systems like that to all of a sudden manage customer relationships at the same time, that they're just not built to do that, whether they're traditional, systems or not, right? They're ERPs, they're supposed to do ERP things. But asking the question, there's just so much around the customer. If you can ask yourself questions like, do we ever want to show this piece of data to a customer, is one I like to ask. And that's where, if the answer is yes, and it's buried in an ERP, or the customer facing team always has to ask somebody else for that piece of data, it's not a system built around the customer experience. You got to be able to serve that data up readily if you're on a call or via email, or, best case scenario, self-service, via website when it makes sense. So love that advice. So we're going to do a little bit of a rapid fire here around HubSpot itself.
Sure, bring it on.
Most underrated HubSpot tool.
Underrated. I think there's going to be quite a few that I think people would use more, but at least in my neck of the woods, it's playbooks. Or it might not be playbooks factually, but I think it's playbooks. It's the stuff that you can do with that in terms of onboarding and adhering to specific processes, especially now that you can put videos and everything inside it and literally create records from within a playbook and store the data that you save in there into contact properties. It makes the whole interaction that your users have with the system that much more satisfactory, I think, while at the same time making the cleanliness of your data that much better. Let's put it that way. I don't know if I've got time for that, but I just want to quickly drop this one example that I saw. I don't know if you know the same video example. Is a guy who shows off how he used playbooks in combination with a custom object for jobs to do the handover of salespeople to the people who actually had to deliver the product for a roofing company. And he uses playbooks in adherence with like field-based level permissions, so that salespeople could not move a deal to the closed won stage unless they had the full job playbook completed with all of the information that was needed for the roofer to actually put down the roof, which you can build all of that stuff. And it takes a little bit of customization, a little bit of going outside of the very easy to understand stuff inside of HubSpot, but it's really not that difficult, and it just completely transforms the way you work, I think, with your system. So that's for me, it's playbooks. Yeah, definitely would want to implement that more on my side.
Yeah, I love that. That's definitely one of the more underrated for sure. Most overrated HubSpot tool.
From a marketing perspective, I am very tempted to say lead scoring, and and not everybody will agree with me on this, but and it's not so much the tool itself, because the concept on paper is really nice, but the way that I've seen it used in, let's say, 95% of scenarios is people will go and build a completely baseless lead scoring model where they go and say, all right, somebody opens my email mobile, 10 points, and then they get, 50 points, and then they're going off to sales because they're qualified, simply because they opened an email, visit the pricing page, and maybe submitted a particular form or something. And I feel like I'm still not sure if I like the idea of lead scoring. Like, I've seen it used wrongly so many times, or poorly. But for me, I think, because you've got the lifecycle stage property, right, with subscriber lead, marketing qualified lead, sales qualified lead. For me personally, especially if you're a little bit into the whole demand gen sort of flow right now, I like to consider customers or prospects as either they're in market to buy something right now, they have a bleeding neck, that's like 1% of your market, probably your total addressable market, or they're not, and they're at some stage of wanting to be educated, but it sure as hell isn't going to be a nice linear journey. So it's kind of related to that, in the sense that people trying to jam everybody through a neatly organized funnel from left to right, whereas that whole front stuff before they actually raise their hand and say, hey, I want to buy from you, it's the maze. And I feel like tools like that, like lead scoring or like the lifecycle stages, in most cases won't exactly work as neatly as they're presented. And that's, I think lead scoring for me is the biggest criminal there.
I think we just became best friends, Bob. Yeah, lead scoring is always one of those things that people ask for, especially from outside of the marketing department. It's just so hard to get it right. Like, it's not that you cannot get it right, but to do it well, you just need so much behavioral data and like engagement data to understand that you're not just, underqualifying or overqualifying people. And, to your second point, I agree. Like, if you agree with this new model of just in market versus out of market, then there's no score. Like, the person raises their hand, that's the signal you talk to them. Like, and that's it, right? So love that. Most misunderstood HubSpot tool.
By me or by the general populace?
Either way.
It might also be lead scoring, but I'll go with something else. I'm trying to think of something. I think it's not really a tool, but I want to say marketing contacts. It's more of a funny one, because I always get, as a response to, hey, we need to manage your amount of marketing contacts, I say, no, we've got permission to email all of these folks. As people don't seem to understand that marketing contacts is just the way that HubSpot determines whether you're paying for the contacts or not. Right? It's the because of the naming, right? Marketing contact. Are you able to send emails to them? And I go, yeah, we've got permission, or they tick the box, and then I always have to explain it. Ticking the box is one thing. That's your GDPR or whatever you want to call it, like your subscription part. But then there's another part that's purely financial. It's, are you paying for these customers or these contacts to be able to send them emails? And that's something that I always have to explain at least 3 times in a call to get it really through to them, that it's not about the opt-in.
No, That's a good one. I could probably use a little more understanding myself on that one. How about your top wish list item for HubSpot?
Oh, I'm sure that there's one on there. I can't think of one right now, but yeah, I've got one, but I'm sure there's better ones. I just can't think of them right now. One that I hope for, it's a little bit more towards reporting, is forms. I need to be able to segment or filter better on interaction that contacts have had with forms. And I'll give you an example right now. If I want to create inside of a list or inside of a trigger for a workflow, let's say that I want to get all of the people who submitted one of two forms in a certain time period. I can do neither of those things easily. If I want to say they've submitted any of the following forms, let's say that I need 5 or 20 or something, right? 20 forms. It could be if you've got a multilingual setup and you've got like at least 20 different forms up in the air and in 10 languages, then you've got 200 forms. So let's say that I only want to select one form, but in 20 different languages. That's 20 forms in my portal. If I want to check if they've submitted any of those, I need to create one filter group that says they've submitted this form, because I can only select one or any form at all. So I cannot select this, and that form, and no other forms. So what I need to do is create one filter group, clone it 20 times, or however many times, and then change the form in each of those. And then I also cannot filter on have they submitted it in the last X days, or I can do this. Oh no, wait, this is with page visits, but it's a similar frustration. Let's say that for lead scoring, right? I want to set up something that says, have they visited our website at least 5 times in the past month? I can do at least 5 times or in the past month, but I can't do both. So it's little things like that. And this, I mean, if you're listening, you're now going, oh my God, HubSpot can't do anything. No, these are little frustrations, in the large scale of things, but it always gets me riled up when, especially in those bigger portals, they go, can you quickly make me a list of all the people who submitted this form? And I'm sat there clicking like a chump. Because it does feel like that. It's just like, oh my God, this should be smarter.
I think my takeaway is that us English-only marketers have it pretty easy.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. Here in Europe, that's a nightmare. So if you got an international company, that's at least like 10 different languages you're dealing with already. So,
yeah. Man, I think it'd be good to have you back on and just talk about that. I know there's lots of tools available that I've looked into in the past to help with that. But yeah, man, thanks for sharing that list.
Absolutely.
What's your last piece of advice for any listeners just trying to optimize, their HubSpot setup for manufacturing?
This is, again, it's a hard one because there's probably advice everywhere. But I think just to start at the core of things is check your data. If you're at a point now where you feel like there's a lot to optimize, then step 1 is probably to look at your data model inside of HubSpot. Right alongside, look at your process, but look at your data model. Does it make sense the way it's set up right now? Are there things that are currently set up as single line text fields that should really be drop down fields or number fields? Things like that, are there double properties? Are there better ways you could organize your properties? Things like that, because it's the core of a lot of the stuff that you build around it inside of HubSpot. So review the data platform or the data model.
Awesome.
I think that would be one of them. But
yeah, and if you have Operations Hub and you haven't been to the data quality dashboard yet, please go. HubSpot is starting to do a lot of this work for you. It's good stuff. Awesome, Bob. Well, thanks so much, for being here and sharing your insights today. I think this has been super helpful for our listeners that are trying to better understand, HubSpot in general as a full platform, but also for manufacturing. Where can people reach out and find you? Yeah.
For me personally on LinkedIn, it's just Bob Balm. first name, last name. I'm sure it's somewhere around here. Love to hang out there. I'm not as present there as I would like to be. The Sprockets community is also a big one. If you're a HubSpot super admin or just an admin in general for HubSpot, find that one and join us there, because both me and Chris are on there. And yeah, begradient.com is the website for our company. So yeah, if you're in Europe and you need HubSpot support, that's where you would find us. Oh yeah, and I'm also on Instagram under the same handle, but that's my photography hobby, which is another thing that I do a lot. So
there you
it's
go.
got nothing to do with
Check
HubSpot.
that out.
Hey.
Hey,
Yeah.
it helps to have the whole picture sometimes. Awesome, man.
Cool.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. And
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
until next time, we'll see ya.